everybody, it's Phil again, Fantasy Author's Handbook on YouTube, and this is it, the fourth and final video in the giant random eBay science fiction, fantasy, etc. book haul. Getting to the last batch of about, 23 we're going to look at today of the 95 books in this giant $249 lot of books that I picked up on eBay. We have finished up with all the random books, which, in this case, random means books by a particular author who only had one book in this box. So in some cases, some stuff I've never heard of, some really obscure stuff, in other cases, some, significant big name authors, etc. We've also finished up with all of the books that are not either fantasy, science fiction, or horror. So the rest will be really mostly science fiction in this box. And then in the end, I'm going to reveal the last of the two, or the second of the two authors who really made me have to buy this box. There were books in here we had seen already in a previous video, the Harlan Ellison books, which I've already put up on a shelf there just out of sight, that were really, really important to me. And in this final one, we will see who that other author was and what those books were that made me just have to really focus in on this lot and get this. But in the meantime, let's start with the single author who probably had the most books in this lot. I'm also kind of getting the feeling that these books came probably from the same collection, or mostly from the same collection. They all tend to be around the same time period, kind of the early 70s to maybe stretching into the early 80s, and then with a few sort of strange outliers in there. And there were definitely some favorite authors in here. And it looks like Jack Vance was a... Well, listen, it's Phil from the future. I screwed up right away with the very first of the Jack Vance books from this huge eBay book haul. So I'm just going to dive in here and get it right. This, which is, the book that came in with that book haul, is The Dragon Masters by Jack Vance. Very slim, beautiful, about 140-page novelette that has the same cover. Ace did this all the time. Publishers do this all the time, and have done it for a long time. Has exactly the same cover as the Ace Double edition. I collect Ace Doubles. Big fan of the Ace Doubles. This is the book. I own this and have read it. So I have read this already. I own it already. And I actually own it in 3 editions now. So let's kind of parse these out here. This, which came in the book haul from eBay, is 1978 Ace reprint. These are all Ace, obviously. Like I said, same cover art as the Ace Double, which is, and again, there are 2 Ace Double editions. This is the later 1972 edition. This is the one that I read. And it comes with another Jack Vance book on the other side called The 5 Gold Bands. Really fun, kind of hard-boiled detective space opera sci-fi thing that was just a hoot. I really, really loved both of it. Dragon Masters was the slightly better of the two. This February 1963 edition is actually the first. It's got the same 5 gold bands on the back, but obviously different artwork. This is the first book publication of Dragon Masters, which was originally published in Galaxy magazine, August 1962. That was Frederick Pohl who was editing Galaxy at that time. This cover, which is super cool, I'll zoom in there a little bit, definitely reads more sci-fi, while the later edition definitely reads more fantasy. This is just kind of the difference between, 1963, we're definitely loving sci-fi. 1972, we've rediscovered Tolkien. Fantasy is kind of making this surge at that point. And definitely would have been the reason behind keeping that more fantasy art for the 78 reprint. what can I say about this, right? I mean, it won the Hugo Award that year for Best Short Fiction, even though the second Ace Double edition says novel. You know, who's keeping track? Honestly, I think it's a triumph of world building. It's really, really spectacular in such a small space. It is kind of a fantasy tinged story. It imagines a future where it's, you know, the human race is colonized, you know, all the, you know, sort of big part of the galaxy, I guess, but met up with a warlike alien species that have basically eradicated everybody, fought us down to one world, and they've kind of reverted to this semi-fantasy feeling, kind of semi-medieval feudal society. But they have these genetically engineered monsters, these dragons, that they have created to fight for them, you know, as sort of their primary weapon in this, you know, it's a last stand for humanity as the aliens come to attack. Really, really fun, really cool, just really terrifically done. I'm tempted to keep this book, even though it will be, you know, edition number 3 for me for the Dragon Masters. It's in such beautiful shape. I mean, this is really spectacular to have lived like this since 1978. It appears perfectly straight spine, right? It appears never to have been read, which is a shame because this book is really, really good. Then, of course, there's a big part of me that says, no, definitely put this out on eBay so that somebody will get a chance to read this, since I have 2 already. So we'll see. Anyway, this has been republished a ton of times. From what I understand, as recently as 2016. So you should be able to find it in one of its many, many editions. You don't necessarily have to go back to the 60s or 70s. Read it. Read it. Okay? Now back to Phil from the past and the rest of the giant eBay book haul. Continuing in the Jack Vance vein, right? The Last Castle. This is another novella, right? And reissue from a 1976 Ace edition. I have it as half of an Ace Double that I have not yet read. Excuse the tape and the little flap there, but this is the Ace Double version that is in my collection. Kind of fun, groovy cover art. This is also good, fun, groovy, weird kind of alien person there. I have not yet read this. This one was in an Ace Double, and it was actually unusual that Ace Doubles had 2 books by the same author. Usually they would kind of mix that up, right? Was that Tony Russell? What's his name? Wayman. Tony Russell Wayman. There's an author who's kind of disappeared. I don't know about him. But I will read this book in my coveted Ace Double. So this is another one that looks like, as much as this person, wherever this came from, must have been a big Jack Vance fan, this looks like it's completely unread. Just absolutely perfect condition. Will it show up on eBay? Will I keep it just because? Time will tell. This one I'm definitely keeping. This is 100% a keeper. This is the first printing Ace from 1973 of the Worlds of Jack Vance short story collection. And remember, if it's stories by all the same author, that's a collection. If it's stories by different authors, that's an anthology. I'm really excited to have this. I love these just short story collections in general. Coming from this era that Jack Vance came from, really sort of writing in the 50s and beyond, science fiction lived mostly in the magazines, so it's a lot of great short fiction out there. So I was just like, ooh, wow, Jack Vance story collection. And then I opened it up and looked at the contents page, right? And realized, oh, those, I kind of recognize these titles. Like, I've seen these before. Wait, I've definitely read that. I've definitely read that. I've definitely read that. And I did, because lo and behold, The first, is it 5 stories? The first half of this collection that came in the box are in order exactly The World Between and Other Stories by Jack Vance, which is another ace double of his that I have and have read. And again, with another really super cool space opera-y sort of thing, Monsters in Orbit. What really terrific cover on this one. I hope you can see that okay. So I have read half of this anthology already. More than half. There were 5 stories in here. There are 9 in here. The first 5 of these were from the previous collection. You know, listen, in publishing, you reuse and you redo stuff, right? Trust me. If there's an audience for it. So anyway, I'm definitely keeping this, and it, you know, I'm happily will reread those first 5 stories, or worst case scenario, just read the other 4. I really love The World Between, so there's no reason why I won't love The Worlds of. So now the rest of these Jack Vance books I do not already have, and I have not already read. So this is good for me. Very, very happy. This one is just gorgeous, right? This is 1977, second printing in Del Rey, which was originally published by Ballantine, which is actually the same company, in 1966. This one I have heard about, and it sounds really cool. Great Vincent DeFate cover. In fact, really, let's kind of zoom in on that. A Waterworld story, right? And you had me at Giant Sea Monster. Done. I'm in. That's all I need. This cover is all I need. The fact that it's written by an author who I have read and really, really liked before, super bonus. And just gorgeous, these older Del Rey books. Del Rey got a little, cover art-wise, right, and design got a little iffy in the 80s, but this one is just a winner. I love it. I mean, perfect. The Blue World by Jack Vance. And if I'm looking off camera like a crazy person, I'm not crazy. I have notes. I can't remember everything. I'm getting older. All right, anyway, next Jack Vance, To Live Forever. So isn't this the building in Shanghai, right? China? Well, apparently this artist envisioned a city of those buildings. That is the building of the future. And then this really scary looking guy here. This is 1976. This one also Del Rey. Also originally published by Ballantine in 1956. This is Dean Ellis, the cover art. Really, really cool. It's Immortal Revenge, it says. I kind of read I don't usually read cover copy on books like this because I'm like, you know what, I already own it. I'm going in fresh. I have no idea what it is. It was written by Jack Vance. He's good. I'll just dive in. So when this comes up on the to be read pile, I will dive in cold. I think it's kind of about, what, immortals fighting each other? Ooh, really cool. I'm being goofy, but this guy can write like crazy. And next up of the 9 Jack Vance books, this is The Languages of Pow. Still working on making sure that we're not too glary there. Yeah. Okay. This was originally published in the December 1957 issue of Satellite Science Fiction, right? Then in book form by Avalon Books in 1958. This is the 1974 Ace edition. Cover by Larry Kresek. I think I'm pronouncing that right. This looks like a kind of a mix of science fiction and fantasy, where language is used to divide people. Is that what it is? I don't know, but it will be read. There's a back cover copy if you want to freeze and read on that. Again, I tend to just go in cold. This looks like a pretty, tightly packed little book. In good shape. All of these are really, or most of these have been in really pretty decent condition, which is great. The Brave Free Men. So this is where we get into, in the previous videos we talked about, do I hold on to books that are number, 5 in a series of 10 or something like that? Am I willing to commit to the whole series? If there is, if every time I've come across the first book in a series, I'm 100% there. Because if I like the book, then I'll read the rest of the series. And if I don't, no harm, no foul. This one is the second book in the Durdain trilogy. So we don't know. I mean, it is Jack Vance. He's really good. I'm going to hold on to this and seriously consider finding the first one. But in any case, this is the 1973 Dell first printing. This was first published also in, like the last book, in 2 parts, which was not unusual that they would do novels, or really novella-ish, right on the line between probably novella, novel, depending on that particular magazine's word cutoff at the time. This was in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. The Paul Lair cover is pretty dynamic. Love it, right? Looking pretty good. Durdain identified on the back. But I don't know, should we talk about the number of naked people, especially naked men, on the covers of these books in this box? Again, I think this came from the same collection. So I don't know if that was something that was driving this particular reader, or was it just that was happening a lot in the 1970s, to try to get readers to go like, I want the naked guy ones. I don't know. Should I even have pointed that out? Probably not. But anyway, now I need to wrangle up the Anomi, is that how it's pronounced? I'm looking off at my notes, which is book 1. And then book 3, which is the Astura and the Durdain trilogy. I'll hold on to this. I will find those other books because it is Jack Vance. Okay? It is. This one worries me. Now we're going to get into an issue with this particular Jack Vance book here. Mask. I'm not going to pronounce the E, right? Theory? 1977 Berkeley Medallion edition. Pretty rough shape. This one I was just saying, like, oh, these books are in actually really good shape. This one, not so much. Oof, right? Oh, look at that. Water plus books equals terrible. Not great. But perfectly readable, which is fine. Ooh, it's kind of spine challenged. Perfectly readable, which is fine by me. I have no problem with old books that look old. I actually prefer old books that look old rather than, because I'm really mostly interested in the content. So, if it's beat up like this, that doesn't mean it, has to be replaced by some sort of pristine hardcover first edition or something like that. Anyway, this was first published in Berkeley Putnam in 1976. Yeah, so 17 books in the Gaian Reach series, and this is number 2. So the good news is that it's number 2. That means that all I have to do is rustle up a copy of The Gray Prince, which is the first book, and then, just do my thing where I read the first book, and if I love it, and it's Jack Vance, so the possibility that I'm in for a 17-book series now is actually fairly high. So now I need to go out and look for The Gray Prince. And then I sort of looked it up more. It turns out this is actually really more of a series of trilogies. And here's the thing about being a guy like me who obsessively buys books, in some cases in random lots of stuff from the internet, is that it turns out I already have the last 2 of the 17-book series, Ports of Call and Lurulu, in this really groovy science fiction book club edition, which I love the science fiction book club edition. I will do like a whole video of how great the science fiction book club editions were and should be again. beautifully perfect condition because I bought it, I don't know how many years ago, and it went on the shelf and I haven't gotten to it yet. Little did he know that it was books 16 and 17 of the series. But now that I have book 2, book 16, and book 17, I'm officially in. If you look at the shelves behind me, I'm not afraid of series. Really, I just sort of, I kind of am afraid of series. I have to put this down somewhere. The Guy in Reach series by Jack Vance. Here we come. Okay, are you ready? Are you buckling up? Because I'm buckling up. I'm buckled up for that. It's Jack Vance. We're doing it. Okay. Last of the Jack Vances, which is, and this one's really interesting. I was glad that this was in here. Speaking of books that were not technically science fiction or fantasy, which I said there were none of, except this one. This is the Deadly Isles, which Jack Vance wrote using his middle name to apparently to denote that this is not science fiction. Which is fine, right? I mean, I read Ian Banks and Ian M. Banks. I get it, you know, and this is a lot easier to identify than all of the various authors from back in the, definitely back in the pulp fiction days, way back in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who had multiple pseudonyms depending on the genre that they were writing, and in some cases, just lists of names. So this is Jack Vance, or John Holbrook Vance, 1971 Ace edition, right? Obviously Ace was his publisher. Good for them. This came out originally in hardcover in '69 from Bob's Merrill. You know, I don't know, right? A San Francisco bee girl is found murdered. I guess I have to read this just at least to find out what a bee girl is. I don't know. Not great condition, spines all curled up, not good. But I don't know, right? What the heck? It's going in the giant random to be read pile to randomly be read at some point in the foreseeable future. This isn't going anywhere. I'm keeping this. This is another one that might be one of those winners that you'd never heard of. As far as I know, nobody's really talking about it. I don't know, you know, I mean, who's talking about it, you know, 45 years later, but whatever. I'm keeping it. I'm interested. Let's find out. It is Jack Vance, John Holbrook Vance. So there you go. That's it for Mr. Vance. Next up, this is an interesting one because, you know, what I said is one of the things I love about big lots of books like this are finding books that I've never heard of by authors I've never heard of. That's a feature to this sort of thing, definitely, and not a bug. So here, next up are 2 books. This is an author I have never encountered before. Had to look him up. Are we saying they? Because Simon Lang, this is Simon Lang, All the Gods of Izernon. Real name Darlene Artel Hartman. This is the first printing from 1973. Gene Safran cover, really, really cool. Just that sort of great, you know, sort of stylized Saturn V rocket in this weird, like Garden of Eden kind of thing. Rough shape, difficult shape, not good shape, not good condition. It's got the sprayed text block, which is just horribly faded. Probably got wet. Looks like that got wet. Oh, that got totally wet. Oh no. No. Right? Cover is cool, but look at the condition of this thing. Not great. But again, readable, right? There's nothing preventing me from reading this. I don't know. So into the random pile it goes. Simon Lang, right? Obviously coming from that era where there was still that sense that science fiction is only for boys and only boys can write it because only boys read it. So if you're a girl, you need to have a boy's name, like James Tiptree Jr. I don't know. I think that's crazy since even in 1973, there were a lot of women who were writing science fiction and doing it really, really well with their own names, etc. And we won't even get into the whole thing that the first modern science fiction novel was written by a woman named Mary Shelley who used her real name. Whatever. But for whatever reason, Darlene Artell Hartman became Simon Lang, and I don't know, the book looks cool. It's in rough shape, but who cares? I will read it. Again, I like old books that look old. I don't mind books that have been read, that have been loved, that have been, unfortunately, not well cared for, but there it is, Simon Lang, whoever you are. And here's the other one, also by Simon Lang, which is kind of fun, that it says, identifies them as the author of All the Gods of Eyes Are Not. So, got the full set. This was 2 years later, first printing from Avon, 1975, just beautifully perfect mid-1970s John Berkeley cover. This is, what science fiction cover art looks like to me. I mean, this was the era where I was just reading and buying lots of SF paperbacks, and this is what they look like. So it turns out that these are the first 2 books of the 5-book Skipjack series, which looks really interesting, very space opera sort of stuff, etc. The Adventures of the Starship Skipjack. So how do I not read these, right? And so I'm going to have to go out and buy the last 3 because that's what I do. The Skipjack series by Simon Lang. Let's go. All right, into the big to-be-read pile those go. Actually, those go onto the incomplete series shelf, which you'll see some of these books here that we've seen in previous videos and other. So I've got the full Uplift series, but these are things that we work on, as readers and fans and collectors. So let's go Skipjack by Simon Lang. All right, I'm a Frederik Pohl fan. I'm happy to report that. I have been for years and years. When I was in junior high in high school, I was like Frederik Pohl all the time. Gateway is still one of my favorite novels of all time, full stop. So I was delighted to see a couple of Frederik Pohl books in here, including one that he wrote with Cyril or C.M. Kornbluth. Weird cover art there, right? Gladiator at Law. Weird title. I've heard of this long, I've seen it, I've heard of it. I have not yet read it. I'm delighted to have it. This is another one that originally appeared as a serial in magazines in Galaxy, June, July, and August of 1954. So this is going back into that kind of golden age, whatever you want to call it. 1977 Bantam edition, this one. Very scary cover, right? Sandy Coulson. Really cool. Futureland USA. I did kind of flip through, I kind of read the back cover copy. Is this the Hunger Games, but 54 years earlier? It kind of sounds like it. This is something we're going to have to check out, right? Who knows? Look, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. I'm not saying that the Hunger Games is unoriginal or anything like that. We all know, other stories similar to that came along, but everybody has a fresh take on stuff. So this is not like anti-Hunger Games stuff, but it definitely seems to have a similar conceit, and why not? So Pohl and Kornbluth, you can't go wrong. You really can't. They have goofy names, or Kornbluth is goofy, but fantastic authors of great science fiction. Frederik Pohl by himself. From this kind of later period, this is The Age of the Pussyfoot. This is the second printing, 1977, from Del Rey. Another serialized thing, right, from Galaxy magazine again, October, December, and January 1965. I don't know if that's October and December of 64 and January of 65. I don't know. I don't know. But I guess Galaxy went from monthly to bi-monthly between 1954 and 1965. If you're looking back, or if you're, remember back from Gladiator at Law that came out in June, July, and August, and this one October, December, January. It happens. That was getting to be about the time when magazines were turning over to pocket books, what they were called at the time. The first mass market paperbacks were really getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Anyway, right, this one from 1977, weird kind of monster alien guy. I'm going to make that so that you can see it. Artist Paul Alexander. The whole thing just feels exactly like the era when I was really buying a lot of books again, right? The late 70s into the early 80s, well, and beyond, right, obviously. But it really looks like the prototype Del Rey mass market of the time. I don't know what else about it. Man alive, it says. It's Frederick Pohl. Frederick Pohl was a genius. He's amazing. I'm 100% in for the age of the Pussyfoot. I have no idea what it's about. It doesn't matter. Frederick Pohl is awesome. There you go. I met Frederick Pohl once. Did I ever tell that story? I'll tell that story another day. I have a copy of a science fiction book club edition, hardcover edition of Gateway that he signed, and it's just one of my prized possessions. Great guy, unbelievably smart. Frederick Pohl. If you haven't been reading Frederick Pohl this whole time, you gotta just go get a copy of Gateway, and you're welcome. Moving right along. So I had bought kind of at random, and it was in my random pile of books, and it came up at random, and I read a book called A Mirror for Observers by Edgar Pangborn, and absolutely loved it. I was blown away. I went in expecting, this is going to be one of those great kind of dated old 50s books that, I've got Doc Savage right behind me. So I have certain set of expectations that it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And I was ready for it to just be this kind of fun, great, whatever, potboiler, sci-fi thing. He was not really an author that I would say I've heard his name, right, but had never read before. Wasn't kind of one of those supposedly great science fiction authors that you hear of all the time. But he actually is. Edgar Pangborn is somebody you should not be sleeping on. A Mirror for Observers was fantastic. It was unbelievably surprising. Very contemporary feeling for a book that was written that long ago. And so when I saw a couple of books by Edgar Pangborn in this box, I was very excited to have it. He's not one of the two big Uber authors, but this is pretty close. I was very excited to have these. So this one is, again, another book that I've never heard of. It's called Davy. This is the first of 4 books in the Tales of Darkening World series. So you know what that means, right? If it's book number 1, it goes into the big random TBR pile. And if I like it, I'll find the other 3 books. That it was written by Edgar Pangborn makes that even as corny and goofy as his cover is. We love cover art. We don't necessarily judge a book by its cover. I have read some amazing books where the covers were like, the hell were you thinking? This kind of falls into that. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be whatever, because here's the thing. This is Boris Vallejo. And I am a Boris fan 100%. I'm not sure exactly what he was given to work with here. Just kind of weird, like teenage boy with a French horn. So not necessarily in the Boris Hall of Fame. Can I get his signature in there? Can you see that? It's probably too blurry. But love Boris. Not so much this one. Anyway, this one will go into the big TBR pile, and if I like it, and again, the chances are pretty high that I will because it's Edgar Pangborn, I will find the other 3 books. This one was originally published the year I was born, 1964, by St. Martin's in hardcover. This is the 4th printing, 1976, from Valentine. Yeah, love Boris cover, not so much this one. it's got a blurb on the back. Trust blurbs like this much, from Theodore Sturgeon, who we remember said that 90% of everything is crud or crap, depending on which one you're reading, how cleaned up it was. I wrote a blog post where I disagree with him. I think it's there. It's actually 80-20-20. I'll link to that. Read that on fantasyauthors.com, the blog. But Theodore Sturgeon of this says, a lovely book, a rollicking book, a cadenced, surprising, provocative, and musical book. So I guess the French horn is not just red herring. I don't know. Edgar Pangborn, I'm in. And another Edgar Pangborn. Ooh. Lots to love about this one. Lots to love about this one. This is Good Neighbors and Other Strangers. Collier books. I might end up in my life having to collect Collier books. At least their SF stuff. There's a feel to them. They're just printed differently. It's a different cover stock. It's a different paper, is it? They feel different. That great Alone Against Tomorrow by Harlan Ellison that we looked at in the previous videos from Collier. I have some other Collier stuff on my shelves. There's something about it I just really, really like. But this is the first paperback edition, 1973. Was a Macmillan hardcover. And it's mystical science fiction tales by Edgar Pangborn. Who's not in, right? Love these single author short story collections. And then this one, used books, right? That somebody had stamped, probably a librarian, discard all over it. You know what? You can discard it. I'm keeping this one. This now goes into Phil's no-kill book shelter. Whatever else happens. But I'm definitely 100% going to read this. Short stories by Edgar Pangborn. Short, right? Big text for old people to read easier. Very, very, very excited to have this. It will not be discarded. We're getting there. So I only have one other author before we get to the big author who made me, along with Harlan Ellison, have to pay a lot of money to buy this box of books. And so before we get to that person, we're going to move on to Brian Ball, or in this case, B.N. Ball, but he was also Brian, just Brian Ball or Brian N. Ball. I've read two of his books, actually. Singularity Station and The Regiments of Night, and loved both of those. Just really great sci-fi adventure tales. Just, brings the fun, brings the action. Just really nicely written. There's not too much, right? in terms of excess verbiage or anything like that. Really just, keeps it to that entertaining sci-fi adventure stories, which I'm an absolute sucker for. So was happy and excited to see three of his books in this lot, starting with writing in this case as B.N. Ball, but I don't think he really differentiated at all. It seems like this is along the same lines as the other stuff that I've read of his. This is the first Avon, or first U.S. edition from January 1969. There were two previous UK editions. Brian Ball is a UK author. Very spooky cover on this one. Kind of spooky, right? Very, again, of its time. Don Crowley is the artist there. It looks like, it says the captive human race. The Earth is imprisoned in some kind of alien force field, right? And then we descend into fascism. Is that what it is? I don't know. I'm going to read it and find out. This goes into the big pile 100% for sure. Next two are the first in a trilogy. So again, here we go, right? So two books that now make me have to buy a third book, especially since I already know the author and there's more to this one. Buckle up for a second. Not yet. But it's going to be time to just like pause for a second. This one is called Timepiece. Now instead of B. N. Ball, it's Brian N. Ball. Same guy. This is book one of a trilogy. I'm not sure that there is a name for the trilogy. It might be just the Timepiece trilogy, something like that. No. The mind-bending search for time itself, it says. You know, kind of a graphic-y, interesting cover. Not, you know, I mean, it kind of says Timepiece plus Earth. It says on the back, right, but perhaps the most disturbing, feasible relativity time distortion thing, I guess, right? Looks interesting. It certainly won't bite me. I'm a Brian Ball fan. It's short. It's not in great shape. Oof. Oh, take care of your books, better people out there in the world. But it's okay. As long as all the pages are here, and it certainly looks perfectly intact. I will read this. I will read it. I will read it, and I promise. And I will move on to, wow, right? What were we saying about the preponderance of naked people on the covers in this book? This one goes way off the deep end. It shows Timepiece with just the graphic kind of cover of the Earth as a clock and stuff, and then just goes like way into Dali-esque, crazy surrealist. Wow, this cover, right? Time Pivot. This is the second book in the trilogy. Cover artist is Tom Adams. We're just going to pause and we're just going to be with this cover for a second. Okay. It looked fascinating, this trilogy, actually. And so now I need to find the third book and put it not into the random big sack of paperbacks, but onto this shelf up here and some of these shelves around me that are eventually read the whole trilogy / whole series thing. We're keeping these. Brian Ball. Okay. So I'm going to gather myself a little bit for the last or second of the two major authors who made me have to buy this box of books. Okay, there's going to be a little cut here just for suspense. All right, then, that gets us to the end here. The last or the second of the two authors who made me have to pay $249 for this box of 95 random science fiction, mostly science fiction and fantasy paperback books. James Graham Ballard, right? Among the most highly regarded figures, not just in genre fiction, not just as a science fiction author, but as a contemporary English literature in general. You've at least seen a couple of movies based on his books. Crash, not the one that won the Oscar that nobody saw, the really weird one by David Cronenberg, and of course Empire of the Sun, which was at least semi-autobiographical, if not extremely autobiographical, novel that was really based on his experience as a prisoner in, of the Japanese during World War II when he was just a kid. And he came out of that experience and just began writing some of the most amazing fiction I've ever read in my life. Dark, as you might expect from somebody with that kind of trauma going into their adulthood. And, he was writing all through, the 50s, 60s, 70s. And what was in this box are 5 books that I think you can get almost all of these now in a contemporary edition. He's obviously a very well-known, very highly regarded author. We're not in that, who is this guy, and I've never heard of him, and I have to Google him kind of thing. But some of these books, these 5 that I'm holding in my hands, are actually difficult to find, certainly in these older editions. It's possible I could get my money back if I put all of these up individually on eBay, but I'm not going to. These are for me forever. But, you know, hopefully, I've already told my kids, you know, don't just bring all this stuff to half-price books for $200. You know, Google stuff, and you may end up, you know, running a online bookstore for the next, you know, 10, 15 years. These are definitely staying with me. Anyway, first of all, right, the 3 great English catastrophe novels, beginning with The Drowned World, in this brilliant, oh, just amazing, amazing UK Penguin edition. I already have a copy of this actually in the giant random TBR stack. It's a much later US printing. I will absolutely keep this one, 1976 reprint of the original Penguin UK A format paperback. This one was printed for sale in the US. Note the dollar, let me get that so you can see it, $1.95, right? On the back cover. I'm seeing these online ranging from $15 to $50 on the high end, probably $50 for the original UK edition. But again, I'm not selling it, so it doesn't matter. This is Ballard's second novel after The Wind from Nowhere, which is a book that he later disavowed. I know that feeling. But this is where he really began as a, you know, as a science fiction author, and a science fiction author who was working sort of beyond the potboiler sci-fi action adventure stuff that I love. But this was, you know, really kind of the beginning of the new wave. This perfect minimalist cover really says it all, right? How prescient will this be, right? I think we're going to have to find out the hard way. I don't think the water's going to get that high. The Chrysler building's pretty big, but The Drowned World, the first one, these are unrelated, these 3 books, right? But he goes into different ways in which the world may well come to an end. The Drowned World, look at that, right? Very short. In actually really pretty good condition, not, you know, the worst, not the best, but I'm just really delighted to have these. I love the feel of the UK A format paperback. They're different from the American mass market paperback. Different paper, I think thinner paper, which usually would be a bad thing, but I don't know, the feel of them in your hands when you're reading them. I'm reading a book right now by Ben Bova that is in a UK edition, and it's just, it feels great in your hands. J.G. Ballard, The Drowned World, excited to have it. This one, the next one, right? I said there were 3 great English catastrophe novels. There is number 2. And again, it's not a series. It's not, they don't follow the same cast of characters. This is the world coming to an end by fire rather than by water. We may end up experiencing, if we aren't essentially already, a combination of both of those things, but here we go. The current edition of this, so if you look for this, you just want to read it, which you should, it'll be called The Drought, which was the original title. Hey everybody, it's Phil from the future again. You know, diving in, pardon the noise, the shaky camera, just had to ditch in here real quick to say, guess what, I already had a copy of The Drought by J.G. Ballard in this, what is this, Harper Perennial Edition. Don't even remember getting my hands on this, but there it is. Obviously, I'm keeping The Drowned World that came in this box, and this one is going to move on. Very nice edition and everything, but I'm keeping The Drowned World. Okay, back to the present, the past. Who knows? As far as I know, this is the only edition which came out under the title The Burning World. This is Berkeley Medallion 1964. So again, this book has been on Earth as long as I have, and that's a shockingly long time. $50 maybe out on the open collector market. It will not go there from me. I'm keeping this. This is mine. It will be mine forever. Much better shape too. A little bit of fading, you know, just like me. But very, very excited to have this, The Burning World. They obviously changed the title here in the US to make it feel more of a set with the Drowned World and the Crystal World, even though, again, I don't think Ballard was thinking along those lines. So it was and is now, again, the Drought, or you may find a almost 59-year-old or 59-year-old copy of The Burning World. The world coming to an end. This time it's fire, not water. J.G. Ballard. Can the world come to an end in other ways besides floods and fires? Well, according to J.G. Ballard, yes. This is the third of those so-called English catastrophe novels, The Crystal World. There is a current trade paperback edition of this, right? This is March 1967, Berkeley Medallion. Maybe $40 out there in the marketplace. This is the first U.S. paperback edition. Not the best of condition, unfortunately, right? Ooh, there's boo-boos there. This is fixable. I will repair stuff like this so that doesn't get any worse. Oops, I'm going to make it worse by touching it. But, you know, spine, not great. But otherwise, you know, intact and perfectly readable. You can see it. It's faded. So am I. It's dusty. So am I. Somebody wrote 30 cents on the inside of it. I won't show you that I do have that tattooed on my chest. No, I don't. I just kicked the camera a little bit because that joke was so stupid that the tripod was rebelling against the idea of it. The Crystal World by J.G. Ballard. Another world-threatening catastrophe or world-ending catastrophe, death via crystallization. I don't know. I may prefer that to fire, at least, although I'm a pretty good swimmer still. So maybe let's go with the Drowned World and see if we can keep our head above water. So I do actually plan to read these as a trilogy, even though they aren't. Just kind of to have that experience of, you know, the end of the world according to J.G. Ballard. Right? Why not? They are standalone novels, but it would be, I think, a fun reading exercise to do that. I'm just really excited just to have J.G. Ballard books in these old editions. I've read a bunch of his stuff. Loved Concrete Island. I have a short story collection that I had read. I think it was the best of J.G. Ballard. Really, really, really good. Just fantastic. I'm so excited to have this these early samples of his early work. It's great. Just really excited. These are going to be set in pride of place and kept, and we're going to keep very, very good care of those. All right, almost the last one. The penultimate J.G. Ballard book in this box, Terminal Beach. What a really cool edition of this, yeah? Great, just wild, weird, sort of, you know, semi-abstract cover art there. As far as I can tell, there is no current edition of this book, at least in the U.S., which explains why this is this is, again, as old as me, 1964 Berkeley Medallion edition, going for about $50. The original hardcover I've seen in the neighborhood of $300. So, you know, it's J.G. Ballard. He is really an author of note. And, you know, those first editions for guys like this go for a lot of money, as well they should. This is a collection of short stories, published only really as far back as 1960. So they're not, you know, this isn't old, you know, crusty pulp stuff. This is a wildly talented author, just, you know, still finding his way, I think, but excited to see this or to read this. I'm sure I've read some of those stories in his best of collection. It was a much later edition. Terminal Beach for sure. But I don't care. I'll read them again. It's probably better. It's actually, I think, better to read it in this original form than it was to have read it in a later best of like that. But anyway, no regrets. This is Richard Powers, by the way, the cover artist. Again, very, very cool. Very attractive book. Red, sprayed, text block, because that was just done at the time. In good shape, right? Not terrible, not, perfect or anything, but we're all old. We're old people. It carries all those sort of old book things that I personally just love, right? The stamp from the bookstore that sold it, or a bookstore that sold it at some point in its life. So it includes the stories Endgame, The Subliminal Man, The Last World of Mr. Goddard, The Time Tombs, Now Wakes the Sea, The Venus Hunters, -1, The Sudden Afternoon, and the eponymous Terminal Beach. Terminal Beach by J.G. Ballard. Wow. I'm so excited to have that. Again, these don't go in the random pile. These go in the intentionally to be read really much sooner and on purpose pile. Last but not least, this doesn't just end the 5 J.G. Ballard books. This ends the giant, ridiculous, super long series of long videos about this eBay lot of books. This is a fantastic, right, UK Panther edition of the Atrocity Exhibition. I just saw this and I was blown away to have this. So excited to have it. And, I will keep my grubby little mitts on this forever and ever. 1972. Weirdly, I've seen this going for as little as $45 online, but who cares? I'm not selling it. I'm keeping it. I'm reading it. Wow. So from what I understand, this is kind of where Ballard went off the rails a bit, but in an exciting way, not in a sort of, the exegesis of Philip K. Dick kind of way, but in, he kicked it up a notch here. I've been hearing about this book for decades, and I don't understand why I haven't read it. This will be rectified soon. This one goes to the top of the pile. I will try to, if I can, very, very carefully remove that sticker from the cover, but if it looks like it's going to damage it at all, it's going to have to stay. Please, for the love of all that's holy, do not put stickers on books. What compels anyone to do that? I do not know. But look at how just perfect and beautiful this book is. I don't, honestly. This is why. This is why we buy books. This is why we accidentally hit the tripod again, because we're so excited. We're too excited to leave that. So, you can even hear my dogs are excited. That's how excited we are. Fresno Bob is down there going, like, oh my God, an old Panther UK edition of the Atrocity Exhibition. Are you kidding me? That's way more excited than the squirrel out there or the car driving by that he thinks is mommy, but it's not time for mommy to come home yet. Anyway, as with the Harlan Ellison books we saw in the second video, these are not going into the big random TBR pile. These are in the Keep Forever shelf, and they will be kept forever. J.G. Ballard. Wow. What a way to end this. These 4 really hour-plus long videos looking at the giant box of 95 vintage science fiction, fantasy, horror paperbacks, about $240, well spent as far as I'm concerned. That averages out to about $2.53 each, which includes tax and postage. So I have no problem paying that much for, any one of these books. I would definitely have bought just like at half price books or whatever for $2.50. No problem paying that much for these. Several of them are worth much more than that, obviously. Some of these earlier Ballard books for sure. And even the ones that will filter out into eBay again, because like we've seen already with the Jack Vance books, I already have them, I've already read them, etc. And I have them in some cases in the original or older editions. Really only a few of these 95 books are going to actually get onto my eBay store. The rest of them are going into the big random TBR pile, which you can't see here, but and some of them are going on the Collect the Whole series shelf, and a few of them, especially the Harlan Ellison books that we looked at and those J.G. Ballard books that we just took a look at, are definitely going on the save this someplace safe forever shelf, and read it as soon as you can. Okay, then that's it. Really, that's all? Only 95 bucks and a giant box from eBay? Until the next one, well, who knows? This one will probably be the last giant eBay box for a long time. I'll, sprinkle in smaller book hauls as I go. I'm buying books constantly, so there's no shortage of that. And I promise I won't make you suffer through every single book that I buy. That would be too much. But anyway, here we are. Fantasy Author's Handbook is on YouTube. Like these videos, like these books, hit that like button. This is YouTube. You got to say all this stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me about these books. What is your experience with these books? Have you read any of them? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Are some of these as new to you as they have been to me? Do you buy books only because they have naked people on the cover? I don't know. It looks like somebody here did. Does that matter? It probably doesn't. I don't know, right? Comments. And subscribe. Look, it's free. And again, this is Fantasy Author's Handbook. There's no secret club. There's no cult. There's no compound. There's no oath of fealty. There's no Patreon. There's no memberships. There's no, sort of Discord thing or anything like that. This is it. Hi, everybody. You can buy me a coffee and do that kind of stuff if you really feel like that's necessary. But here we are. Subscribe. It's free. Subscribe to the blog, which every Tuesday since 2009. Subscribe to the blog. And otherwise, yep, there will be some more book hauls. There will be videos about books, and there will be lots of videos about writing books. Science fiction, fantasy, horror in particular, but fiction in general as well. Okay, thanks everybody, really. Thank you. See you soon.